Well, welcome to this latest webinar from Veeam, cyber attack trends and ransomware, real-world data and insights from Coveware by Veeam. I'm your host, David Hull, the editor-in-chief here at Silicon UK. As ransomware attacks continue to rise, it's more critical than ever for IT and security leaders to stay ahead of evolving threats. In this webinar, we'll be exploring the latest real-world ransomware data, provide actionable strategies, and also strengthen your organization's defenses. Drawing on Coveware's extensive experience in responding to thousands of cyber attacks, this session highlights the cybercriminals' most recent tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs. Over the last quarter, you'll gain invaluable insights into the most active threat actors, their tools, and operational methods, helping you to stay prepared in today's dynamic threat landscape. Veeam's data resilience solutions can ensure that your company's data remains secure and recoverable whenever and wherever it's needed, regardless of the situation. Veeam's mission is always to protect data and enable businesses to become radically resilient. This approach allows organizations to recover from disruptions and thrive and move forward confidently in the face of any data challenge. Now, today I'm delighted to be joined by two guests. The first is Javier Perez, the Senior Director of Product Marketing for Security at Veeam. Welcome, Javier.
Thank you, David. Great to be here.
And my second guest is Magnus Yellen, the Director of Incident Response, EMEA for Coveware by Veeam. Welcome, Magnus.
Thank you, David. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thanks, guys, for joining us. I think this conversation is extremely timely. I believe businesses are absolutely looking at their cybersecurity challenges and what that means for today, and I think more importantly, what it means for the future. I think it's something that is absolutely front of mind for a lot of business leaders, and I'm sure everyone that's joining us today as guests really wants to pick your guys' brains. What can Veeam really give us as insights? And I think that's one of the absolute things that we're going to be doing today. But what I think would be good first is to maybe set the scene a little bit. I'll come to you, Javier, and that's probably a good idea to maybe give us maybe an overview of really where we're talking about Coveware in particular. We're going to really let's talk about Veeam first. I'd like to get an overview of the company. And then we'll go into a little bit more detail about Coveware, I guess in detail. So can I come to you, Javier, for maybe a little bit about Veeam itself?
Sure. No, and again, great to be here. Veeam software, it's a leader in data resilience, what we call data resilience, which includes data protection, data security, and it offers really a comprehensive solution platform to do backups, to do recovery, to provide have intelligence within all of that. Also, what we call data freedom or portability, where you can do backups and get your backups anywhere. Yeah. Cloud, on-premise, hybrid, you name it. We also cover Kubernetes backups. We also cover different workloads like MS 365 or backing up Salesforce and so on. On the side of the services, we have a program called Veeam Cybersecure, and it covers professional services for before, during, and after a cyber attack, more specifically around ransomware. And that's where Coveware comes to play here. Veeam acquired Coveware earlier this year, April. Coveware, it's the leader in incident response, negotiation, exactly during a ransomware attack. And when organizations are in the middle of that attack, they can't do anything. They cannot access their data. They cannot access their data, their systems. Those are the experts they call Coveware by Veeam now. And
absolutely. Thanks for that, Harry. That's a good overview, I guess, where you guys are in the space. Of course, the interesting part, and of course, I guess one of the large reasons that we're being joined today by our guests and our attendees is to I guess get an idea of, I guess, where ransomware is. I think ransomware's been around for a while, but I would think both of you would agree it's an evolving beast. It's an evolving, I guess, an attack perimeter. It absolutely is. So could I turn to you, Magnus? We were talking about ransomware, absolutely, and the tactics that are involved, I guess, recently, maybe in recent memory. From Veeam's point of view, Are you seeing an involvement in that? Are the attacks becoming maybe more sophisticated, more detailed, more integrated? Obviously, you guys track this stuff in great detail. I'm very interested to get an idea of maybe recently. Do you feel ransomware's changed? Has it evolved into something maybe that businesses really haven't seen before? They should be paying attention to really make sure their security is robust enough.
I would say it's changing. It's ever evolving. If you look
Mm,
at our quarterly reports on our webpage,
yeah,
you will see that we have the latest trends, we have the latest variants in those reports. And I
great.
would say that you see that it's evolving all the time. Some of it is to do with specific vulnerabilities and trends that are up in the time. Some of it is just evolving because of the threat landscape. If you look at
Mm,
one of the recent reports we had, you will see that we see more threat actors now have a shorter dwell time from when they
yes,
gain access to the
indeed,
environment
yeah,
and actually roll out the attack. It used
indeed,
to be that we saw more threat actors took longer time to silently move around and prepare
indeed,
what they wanted. So
indeed,
stage the
indeed.
data they wanted to exfiltrate or prepare to roll
Do,
out the encryption.
do you have an insight into why you think that's happening? Because you're right. I speak to many businesses, and when they are, I guess, unpacking an attack, they then understand when they look at the data that, yeah, the infiltrator has been there for months, which is often surprising to the businesses. Now, if that time period is shortening, that's an interesting development from the threat actor's point of view. I wonder if you have an insight in why that would be?
Our impression is that more threat actors are realizing that there's a higher risk of getting discovered before they're
Yeah,
able
yeah, yeah,
to roll out the harm they want to roll out because
yeah.
companies are getting better at looking for them. So we're
That's of
seeing
course.
more threat
Yeah, yeah,
actors
yeah,
now who have a
yeah,
dwell time of only a few days, maybe just one day,
yeah.
and then they allow themselves to be a bit more noisy. So it's more a matter of getting in, getting what you want, and then you've rolled out the attack, be it
Of course, of
exfiltration
course.
only or
Yeah,
also
yeah.
encryption. Whereas if you go back a bit, some of the threat actors were more successful at staying silent in the environment and preparing everything. But more of
Very
them
good.
are realizing now that there's a higher risk of getting discovered and then getting kicked out.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'll say for you, Javier, do
Yeah.
you feel that absolutely because that is now a parameter for the attack? Then really that kind of I guess mindset where you're thinking about security, that really should be a priority. Think about not security is not something that is a long term aspect. It could absolutely be a day before you see an attack, and you have to be prepared for really what could be a very quick attack, and it could be quite widespread for your business. It's really a case of understanding what priority is for your business with security. And I guess when you're talking to a lot of your customer base, I say, well, how can we look at that? And of course, that's where Coveware comes into play.
That's right, and it's what I like to say. It's a multi-layer approach on
Yeah,
security, right?
indeed,
Always
indeed.
try the multiple layers. Just referring quickly through the previous point,
Yeah.
that dwell time.
Mm,
We still see that the number one tactic is this lateral movement, right? Once a system is compromised, the threat actors try to find
oh,
where to go
indeed.
next, right? Or where to find the vulnerability, where
Yeah,
to
yeah.
find the next frontal attack. So yes, we are providing tools, or many vendors providing tools to
Mhm.
identify malware,
Yep.
identify hacking tools, right? And it's obviously you want to prevent that, you want to
Indeed.
improve your
Indeed.
defenses, but then once you are there, and that's where it helps all these multi-layer, zero trust principles approach, where you can restrict that lateral movement before they launch the attack, right? And
Yeah, absolutely.
we can talk in more detail about now what happens when it happens, right? Now when
Yeah.
they execute the
Yeah.
encryption or the exfiltration and so on.
Is that kind of where that phrase TTPs comes from? Yeah, tactics, techniques, and procedures. I would imagine that is almost like a framework for you guys. If you can look at tactics, techniques, and procedures, I guess from the criminal's point of view, then you can protect yourself or you can defend against that. So, it's a lot of what Veeam also does is understanding what the threat landscape looks like, where the endpoints are, and what the potential security issues are for those endpoints. as that comes back into the business. Do you really take I guess, as you say, an integrated and a very holistic view of what security means for businesses?
Yes, we have the tooling coming from Coveware, and we've recently been talking about the recon scanner, for example, and it's about identify from different events, from different information on the customer systems, servers, get that information, and then map that to the MITRE attack framework, where there are listed tactics, techniques, and procedures. There are more than 400 techniques, for example. So if we see, let's say, suspicious activity, well, we can map that to, hey, look, they are stealing credentials, right? Just to give an example, one of the 400. And that's how we help basically identify and say, well, look, we can raise a critical alarm or a critical notification here saying, look, we're seeing this suspicious activity. Let's do something about it before an attack.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I would imagine you would agree with that, Magnus. That if you can be prepared, and if you are prepared, you have infinitely more chance of recovering quicker. Because often I feel that with security, we often build walls around our data, of course, and they still get infiltrated. Some of these cybercriminals are very, very sophisticated, and it's recovery afterwards. It's how can you recover back to literally to restore your data, restore your business as quickly as possible. I imagine that's also something that I guess you talk a lot of that stuff is really built into Coveware and what Veeam does for their client base. Because I always feel that security, I've said it's a holistic approach. It's also bespoke for certain businesses. We'll build security just for you. But I guess there are certain parameters which are the same across the board. Let's look at security for your server. Let's look at your SaaS applications. What does that mean for security? That kind of thing. So do you often have that conversation with your client base that let's also look at the endpoint. Let's look at how you guys are going to recover, because often the recovery part I feel is sometimes out of focus for businesses. We protect our businesses from attack, but how are we going to recover? That's very, very important, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'll let you speak in a second, Magnus. But I just want to add that that's the number one thing for Veeam, and it's been for years. First, help with best practices in terms of the design, the architectural design of their backup environments, the data protection, and then have your playbooks ready for recovery, and more importantly, test those backups.
Absolutely,
sure
do you know, Javier? I'll just write that on my pad. I just write on my pad. This is not a one. It's not a tick box exercise. Security is not we put something in place like Coveware and forget. That's not what security is. Security is an evolving thing. Come back to this, and you have to be absolutely aware of this all of the time. Security is present 24/7 because cyber attacks are 24/7. So that idea that you can, we've done security because it's in place, that's really not the attitude, is it? It's you really must think that security is an ongoing evolution for your business.
It is ongoing. You have to test your recovery plans. You have to be able to identify if you have clean backups, because sometimes happens that you recover from a backup, but you're already still infected, right?
Indeed.
And then you call Magnus for help again, right? Because
Absolutely.
you've been attacked.
What do we do? What do we do?
It is a constant situation. Now, despite all the best practices and around security and these layers of security, you might still be compromised, right? Because there's a lot of phishing out there, stolen passwords, and so on. And then maybe we can talk a little bit more about, then what happens, right? How do you react when you are being attacked? And I would love to have Magnus take on this, because that's an important piece between being attacked and then, the recovery, or if you can recover. That's a very interesting piece that not a lot of organizations know about it.
No, that's right. And yes, I always feel that's absolutely right. It's okay. An attack's happened. and I'm looking at you, Magnus. So it's happened. What do we do? Do we have protocols in place? Do we have the infrastructure to be able to recover? I imagine that's something that you are speaking to businesses about constantly. That you have to have a plan of action. What if this happens? How do we react? If this happens, how do we react? Because all cyber attacks aren't the same, and your reaction, I would imagine, has to be tailored to what kind of attack you have. So it's your playbook again, multifaceted, integrated. So is really I guess, the thing that Coveware delivers is that kind of insight, but more importantly, it gives you those tools to recover as quickly as possible.
So a lot of what we deliver is definitely insights. So we have 50 to 100 negotiations every month around the year. That large number of negotiations allow us to gather a lot of intelligence about what's going on, and we're able to provide that intelligence to clients on the front end when they've just discovered the attack. Depending on what threat actor are you dealing with, what is your current situation, then we're able to combine that with our intelligence and say, this is what you should expect. This is what we recommend that we do next. So it's all intelligence based because of the high number of cases we have. And you're absolutely right. Companies need to have their protocols in place. I'm often asked, what's the number one mistake that companies make when responding to an incident? And actually, usually the number one mistake goes before the incident. The number one mistake is not preparing. Some companies think that, well, if we do suffer an incident, we will rise to the occasion, when reality is you will fall to the level of your preparation. So if you're not prepared, you're off to a really bad start. And that is usually, if you're not prepared, then there's a high risk that you will start making the wrong decisions once you do suffer an incident. And it can be difficult down to a very detailed level to prepare. If this happens, we'll do A, B, and C, or if this happens, we'll do X, Y, C. But you need a framework. You need to know your own company. You need to know your own crisis management setup, your own precision-making protocols and procedures, and you need to know what external parties to work with. That is usually a very good framework to start with.
I think so, yes. And it always seems to me the more data you have, the better, because it's all about understanding not only your business and your process and your infrastructure. Where could we be vulnerable? Well, that's data, that's information, that's looking at your entire business end to end, and making a decision about where we could be vulnerable, and let's put in place security for those elements. There'll always be issues, as you've said, social engineering attacks, phishing attacks, the human element, of course, will always be there. But I think it's very interesting when you look at security in the round, that it is absolutely bespoke for you. That you really can't look at security as if one size does not fit all. That is not the case, because it's your individual business, and therefore your individual vulnerabilities potentially. Now, I'd like to turn to an interesting phrase, cyber extortion, which is very interesting. Now, you guys, of course, again, you have massive amounts of data, speaking to lots of businesses to gather that insight and information. And when we're talking about that and your experience with cyber extortion cases, I'd really like to get an insight into, I guess, the mistakes, if in fact you can pinpoint any, that businesses make when they're under that kind of attack.
Yeah, going back to the preparation.
Preparation, yeah.
It's important for me to say that a lot of companies respond in the right way. They identify, we have a ransomware attack, we need to bring in external parties. Hopefully they already have set up relationship with those external parties. But for companies where we see that the response process could be better, I would say usually it goes back to the level of preparation. And also understanding that there's a difference between what you know and what you hope. And companies who sometimes put themselves in a worse situation is because they react on what they hope. So just one example is corporate emails. We see quite a bit of incidents where corporate emails are compromised, but you might not, on the surface, it might not appear so. And it can be a tedious process for companies to, in the middle of an incident, set up a string of new email accounts and start using those on clean devices just because you think you might be compromised. We do see companies saying, we don't see any evidence that we're compromised, so we're going to stay on the corporate emails. And we do see time and time again that further down the road, you find out, oh, wait a minute, the threat actor was in the corporate emails. They didn't make themselves known. They were just eavesdropping. Where we try to turn it around and say, that is because that company hoped that the emails weren't compromised, but they didn't know if they were. So that's a very important example, and it applies to several things in this situation.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, for you, Javier, is it always take that that evidence-based approach? Don't guess, don't think, don't hope. I'm using the word hope in the same sense as security. That's quite worrying. That is very worrying. But don't do that. Take a absolutely evidence data-based approach. You have to know. Don't think, don't hope. You have to know where your vulnerabilities are, and you know how you're going to react. Do you feel we're kind of there yet? Do you feel the businesses that Veeam's talking to are understanding that? Do you feel that it's absolutely something that's on their absolutely on their agendas? Do you feel we're there yet? Do you feel that looking at security in that level of detail is really part of business strategy these days? Do you feel that's true, or do you feel there's still work to be done?
Yeah, well, I mean, knowledge, it's everything here, right? The knowledge, the experience. In our case, it's a combination of technology with, now a database of thousands of cases, plus the expertise. The expertise is another important piece here. When it comes to negotiating with cyber criminals, you better have an expert on your side doing that for you, right? We've seen companies that, just the IT director is the one communicating.
Absolutely.
Or there's an expertise required to do negotiations. And the other thing I want to clarify is negotiate doesn't mean that you are going to pay.
No,
right?
absolutely not.
But you can have a communication and actually gather information. For example, proof of the attack, right? Proof of the exfiltration.
Or, how's that actually happened?
So there are some threat actors there that I'm sure Magnus has a bunch of examples, but there's some threat actors there that they're happy to, it helps them to tell you all the things that you've been doing wrong, right? And that's a good information that you can gather, right? Go back and fix all these different things that they did to get into your systems.
Yeah, it always seems to me it's security these days is a little bit like I guess virus attacks were like 20 or 30 years ago. We all had protection against obviously virus attack with various pieces of software and virus definitions. But then you ask someone in IT, when was the last time you actually updated the virus definitions? Well, that's probably 6 months ago, which is crazy because what's happened in 6 months? You have to have the data. You have to be up to date with what's happening with every kind of attack, and how are you going to react to that? I think what we've really sort of, I guess, tried to communicate today is, pay attention to that. Pay attention to the security landscape and how that's evolving, and how your protection also has to evolve as well. I think we ought to, turn to, let's kind of move that conversation on. Let's say, okay, an attack has happened. Something, an alarm bell's gone off. Something's happened somewhere, and the company absolutely understands that they've come under attack from some kind of threat actor. You guys at Veeam, now you're a very interesting company because you look at security from, I always think in 360, or the whole thing. What does that mean for a business? You also do something interesting called forensic triage with your technology. Could you unpack that a little bit? So something's happened. So do you really look at the attack itself in enough detail and be able to, I guess, put a wall around that, protect the business so it can recover, and then start looking at what's happened? Is that how you guys actually sort of approach an attack? It's happened, and this is how Veeam can help you with Coveware to understand that, and then move to a solution. Maybe that's one for for you,
You want to cover that, Magnus? I can.
Yeah,
I can cover that. I can just say in the initial assessment, yes, is the big piece.
Okay.
The initial assessment.
Yeah.
We run software. I mentioned it earlier, a recon scanner, an agent, to go and collect all that data, basically collecting that forensic information, and then map it to identify the different tactics, techniques, and procedures used, right? Important also to start identifying things around the encryption and even the who launched the attack, right? Threat actor groups. So that's the initial piece on the assessment. I don't know if you want to add anything there, Magnus.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like Javier says, it always starts with an assessment, and we need to gather as much information as possible. Just to take one example that we're always looking for is we need to attempt to establish the level of encryption versus corruption, because it's not uncommon for companies who have encryption to say, okay, this entire database is encrypted, but once we start running our recon tool on it, sometimes we can say, actually, a significant part of it is corrupted. That is still a bad situation for the company, but it tells us a lot about, okay, what is the potential outcome of this situation if we don't have backups? Which possibilities do we have? Because a threat actor will always tell you, well, our decryption tool will solve everything for you. But if we have established with the recon tool, well, there's a high level of corruption here, well, then we need to adjust that reality when talking to the client, because it might not be the case that the decryption tool will solve it. That's just one example of some of the intelligence that we need to gather early on. So what you can say is we provide all the intelligence that we have from previous incidents, but it's also a matter of helping the client gather intelligence right now and digest it and feed it into their decision-making process and say, okay, this is what we're seeing, and what does this actually mean for us, and how can we move forward from here?
Right, and of course that then feeds into, as we said earlier, into what your recovery process looks like. What does that actually mean? Because you guys also look at that as well. Veeam's immutability and backup verifications. Because again, I think you mentioned this earlier, Javier, that a business can look at recovery and they look at their backups, and either they're corrupt or they are not up to date, and that's a massive issue for recovery.
There's one more piece there. The threat actors target backups.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So they not only encrypt your production data, but they are going to try to target and encrypt your backups. So that's when we talk about immutable backups, offline backups, and air gap backups, and so on. But there are situations. I mean, every case it's a little different, right? But there are situations where we can also help them with the decryption, and we can help also to recover.
I think that's I think businesses are looking for, I guess, security partners. They say we understand that we are going to come under attack at some point. I think the idea of I think you'd agree that 100% security is a myth. It's a case of you have to prepare, have the data, have the insight, have the infrastructure in place for an inevitable attack. That's just a fact of life. And that attack may be more sophisticated, as you said earlier, Magnus. It may be a very short lifespan between when they actually infiltrate the system and something actually happens, when they actually pull the trigger, I guess, and do something to your systems. So that idea of, I guess, looking at how would you recover, that's going to come from backups. Let's make sure the backups are not compromised. I think that's the absolute, because ultimately you'll be relying on those for the future. No,
that is
feel free.
Yeah. And that's another good example. So when Javier talks about having good backups, it's another good example of knowing what you know and not what you think. So from time to time, we do see companies who try to solve this themselves. So they said, okay, our production data is encrypted, but fortunately we have good backups. Unfortunately, sometimes we see companies who do not seek the assistance that they should have, and then they roll clean backups out into an infected environment because they didn't see any evidence that it was infected. And it's very important to remember that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And sometimes we see companies actually need a little bit help with that, because then you could actually, if that happens, you would be going from encrypted production data and clean backups to encrypted production data and encrypted backups. And the threat actors are trying to do this because it only puts them in a better situation. So that's another example where it's a good thing to have external assistance, because this can be very difficult to navigate if it's not something that you do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an absolute a given. I think the recovery process and what that looks like is almost more important, I think, than maybe looking at the potential attacks, because ultimately that is your foundation. And I think every business out there, I think, would agree that they're all data businesses. It's the information that you have in your businesses about your process, your commercial partners, your customer base, whatever that is. That information is lifeblood, to your business. So understanding if that's going to be compromised, and if it is, how you can recover, that's absolutely fundamental to your security practice, or at least it should be. But I would guess that you speak to a lot of businesses. You say they have an idea, if they have a feeling that they have this in place. Again, that's quite worrying if you're basing your entire security practice on a feeling or an idea without any empirical evidence. We need to actually show that is absolutely true. But of course, your data that comes out of obviously Coveware is also extremely useful for, as I said earlier, for evolving these systems forward. Because I imagine when someone comes to you, Magnus, or to you, Javi, and say, "Can you help us with this? We haven't had an attack yet, but we understand that we need to prepare." When you actually, I guess, you audit the business, you look at all process, you look where the data is. Do you often see the same kinds of issues? I guess, where do you feel that the current sort of stress points are when we're talking about security, particularly with data, where that happens to be in businesses, if it's siloed or integrated, wherever that happens to be? Do you have a feeling for where those stress points are at the moment?
I would say that I mean, yes, we do, and it varies, and it evolves just like the threat landscape. Companies also evolve. They definitely do. And again, it goes back to the intelligence. What we're trying to dissect from all the incidents we have is, what is the number one information from the incident I'm dealing with right now that other companies would like to know to prevent from ending up in the same situation. And that we do that constantly, and that allows us to really dissect what's going on right now and feed that forward to the companies we're working with and saying, this is what we're seeing right now. Because oftentimes, where it's, there's a lot of threat actors will use vulnerabilities that are available right now. And if we're able to advise companies on that right now, then we're actually sometimes able to help other companies avoid getting attacked based on the intelligence we have from incidents that we have.
Absolutely, Magnus. I think it's a unique and I think an enlightened approach to security. That you look at what's happening in the environment, and you share that with customer base, because the more we know about the attacks that we're having, how they are evolving, what the kinds of approaches that cyber attackers are actually using. Then if we share that with the community, then we're all going to be more secure. Absolutely. And if you're investing in obviously physical pieces of security, which obviously is integrated with the data and the information that you can obviously deliver with Coveware, that's a very powerful approach to security. And if your business kind of buys into that, then and shares that information widely, we're all going to be more secure in the future. I think that's the absolute end game is better security, because we kind of all need it together.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that we do for our customers is based on the quarterly report that we produce, we share with our customers some of the most common tools used for these attacks.
For instance,
an important piece here is obviously you don't want to allow anyone to download those. And now you have a list of tools. Don't allow anyone to download those, or go and find if you have it in your systems. Now, the caveat here is that many of these tools are also used for business, right? For part of your operation.
Absolutely.
You can use the same tool for a good cause or for a bad cause.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's when it gets a bit tricky, right? And then we provide those type of recommendations. We've seen these more we've seen this more use of this tool from this threat actor. Be careful with it if you're
Indeed.
using it, or
Indeed.
try to use something else, or look for it on any potential activity there that looks suspicious, right? That look like that look
That's a very
executing
interesting.
those.
Yeah, it really is a very interesting approach. I think if anyone was looking at maybe new systems to put in place, having that insight. Well, if you put this in place, obviously it will to benefit our company. That's what we wanted. But this is the security aspect. Have a think about this. If you put that in place, would that then open a door for a potential attack here? And that's a very interesting piece of information that you guys can provide, which I don't see sort of anywhere else, because that's an interesting way of looking at how a piece of software, which I guess on the face of it is very useful. It can help our business to be more efficient or reduce costs or whatever. But it could also be an open door, or it could also be an issue with your security. So that interesting approach that you guys make, that's quite unique. I think that's a very interesting thing that I think everyone that's obviously listening to us today, bear that in mind, because if you are thinking of new systems, etc., have a think about the security aspect. Could this be used for more sinister aspects for your systems? Have that maybe in your minds, or if you're not sure, you guys can absolutely help with that, because you're tracking all this stuff across the the landscape of information and data and security.
But
and
I'll say
you have that insight, yeah.
But I'll say it's also adding, because it's a very good point that Javier is making here. It's also adding another layer to the work that we're doing. So it's not just saying this is a list of programs that we see that threat actors use. You have to be careful with them. It's also adding the context of saying, okay, so maybe you are using these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different programs.
Yeah.
And then saying the specific context we see being a red flag is this program being used with program something else. Saying, okay, so you have these programs, but you have to flag for a specific use of them. That is usually a very important information for the companies. And it goes back to understanding, like you said before, no company is 100% safe. Well, the only company that would be 100% safe is a company that operates 100% offline, which doesn't exist. So you have to be able to understand the different programs and the level of operation that the company requires, and then feed into that context and say, this is what you need to be aware of in that context.
I'm with you. Absolutely.
I smile because when you said completely offline, well, there's also inside threats, right? Insiders that sometimes do bad things.
Absolutely, yes. We often talk, obviously, security and cybersecurity and threats. We always talk of that through the lens of technology, of course. But obviously, us being humans, we're very fallible, and we still click on those attachments we're not supposed to, and we still do things like that. So I think you're right, Javier. That's the insider issues, or it's a risk, shall we say? Yeah,
absolutely. And in terms of kind of overall recommendations, we talked about that principle of the least privilege, right? So you make sure that you provide access to your users at different levels.
Absolutely.
And yes, I know I'm a user as well, and sometimes it's horrible that you can access one thing or another, right? And then you have to go through the permissions, but it's a layer of security. And the other, of course, piece of advice that everyone is telling, but like not necessarily everyone follows, is the whole multi-factor authentication, change your passwords. That will save a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Get the basic right, and you can then build on that foundation, and you should then be in a very, very strong position to have good security, robust, and more importantly, I think we're trying to get across, you can recover as quickly as possible. That's the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go for it, Maz. Go.
No, and like Javier said, having MFA in place is important. Also, for companies to know their own setup, know their own systems. It's not uncommon for us to work with companies who realize, okay, we have to reset all credentials, all users, because we're compromised. And then they say, we've actually never done this. We've done trainings, we've done simulations, and then once we got to the point of resetting credentials, we said, okay, if this was real, this is where we would reset the credentials. Then once they have the incident, they've realized they've never done it before, and some companies say, we don't actually know what happens when we reset everything. We don't know how this will affect our production. We didn't want to do it during an exercise because it might interrupt the business. Well, guess what? If you have to do it during a live incident, the interruption will be even more significant.
Absolutely.
So a lot of companies also have to practice some of these more tedious steps and more unpleasant steps, because it will only be more unpleasant to go through it during an incident.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely a given, that you education and training, etc., looking at really how your business could be compromised on an ongoing basis. That should be part of your really your security strategy going forward. Absolutely. Well, we're almost at time there, guys. What I'd like to finish with is maybe asking each of you, what often with these webinars is, people obviously be listening to us intently, hopefully, and I think a lot of businesses say, okay, that's absolutely, we understand that. And what Veeam could do for us, particularly with Coveware and the data that you guys collect and circulate, is absolutely essential for us. But if there's one thing that a business could take away from today and say, okay, once this webinar has ended, go and do this. Is there anything that you feel, don't do this as a first step, just to get yourself started, or at least on your road to better security? Can I come to you, Javier? What do you think? What if some practical thing that they could do once they finish listening to us? Go and do this today, and that will start you on a very good track for security.
A couple of things. One, go and review your recovery plans, your recovery or incident response playbooks.
Absolutely.
Make sure that you know who to talk to, who are the contacts, who another thing that we haven't actually mentioned here is the prioritization. There gets to a point in ransomware attacks where you have to decide, or you have to prioritize what you're going to recover, what not.
Absolutely.
That could be part of the negotiation, right? You might just need to decrypt one part of the whole thing, and then with that you can restart again. So go back and review your plans, your playbooks. That will be the key. And then the other one, I would just say, go back and change your password, right? You haven't done it in a long time. Go and do it.
Yeah. When was the last time you really did that? Yeah. Go and do that. Go and do that now. Yeah. And for you, Magnus.
Especially for personal stuff too, by the way. When was the last time you updated your Gmail password?
Well, yeah. Let's not go there, Javier. Yeah. let's not do that. Javier, grab two. And do you have one, Magnus?
I was just going to say, Javier covered the most important ones. I would emphasize again MFA, and then making sure that your users don't have more privilege than what they need. Absolutely. It's not uncommon for us to see during incidents that users had way more privilege than what they actually needed, or that they used to be in a role where they had a higher level of privilege, and it was never removed when they moved into a different role.
Okay. So, well, that's fine. I think we ought to maybe close with a little bit more information about Veeam itself. I guess how that kind of feeds in to really what good security means. Maybe you could offer a little bit more detail on that, Javier, just to give our sort of attendees really a clear idea of what sort of Veeam can do for their businesses.
Sure. Let's do that. So with Veeam suite of products, we cover what we would like to call data resilience, and now you're hearing more in the news about cyber resilience.
Indeed.
And it's the whole the three aspects, right? The before, during, and after an incident, right? So there's a ton of functionality now on a Veeam platform. To not just make it easier to do your backups and recover your backups and do the different apps, encrypting backups and so on, but also the security features. And we keep adding on every release more and more security features. Technologies like this, data platform, data resilience, data protection, are now really cybersecurity platforms, right? Of course. And we are protecting the data. We have functionality around malware detection, functionality about identifying, malicious tooling or hackers tools. And now we are also adding Coveware technology. We just announced the Recon scanner also to protect the backup servers. Backup repositories are a big target for threat actors. Important piece here for the Veeam suite of products is the services and the Veeam cybersecurity program. That includes the Coveware incident response retainer, right? You have the experts that you can call when a situation happens. We call it what happens when it happens, right?
Yeah.
And you have the expertise.
What do you do? Yeah.
You have the expertise.
Who do you call? Yeah.
From Coveware, 24/7, 15-minute response SLAs around the world, and helping you from that. What we talked about, the assessment, the negotiation, if negotiation with the threat actors, if needed, even also help with the expertise around the settlements in the case of potential payment to the threat actors, and of course the whole recovery, even the decrypting, making sure that we can help you going and doing the decryption of the tooling. Right? It's a very comprehensive service there by Coveware. And of course, final thing that I almost forget here is that we are also offering ransomware expenses warranty, up to $5 million of a warranty, because we know that backups on the Veeam data platform, if done well with the best practices, they are going to be secure, and you'll be able to recover from those backups.
Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of this webinar, which I'm sure you'll agree was a fascinating insight into security and what Veeam and Coveware can do for your businesses. As ransom threats evolve, the right tools and strategies are essential for protecting your organization. Veeam, in partnership with Coveware by Veeam, offers unparalleled expertise, cutting-edge ransomware recovery and cyber extortion response. From proactive threat detection to swift data recovery, their solutions are designed to minimize disruptions in a space which can be quite in a space that can be quite open to various types of cyber attack. I think the key here for everyone listening to us, I think today, is to really don't wait until a crisis strikes. Prepare your business now. Explore Veeam's cybersecurity solutions and learn how you dedicated ransomware recovery services can safeguard your data and ensure rapid recovery. Take the first step to strengthen your defenses today by visiting Veeam's ransomware solutions page at veeam.com. Act now before and ensure your business can face evolving ransom threats with confidence. I'd like to thank Javier and Magnus for taking the time to speak to us today. Till the next webinar, it's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from Javier.
Thank you. My pleasure.
It's goodbye from Magnus.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.